everybody, welcome back to Whistle Thicket. Tom here. I am going to share some mistakes I made in my garden this year. So it's better for me to share my mistakes to help other people out there. I don't want you to make the same mistakes as I did. I consider myself an average gardener. I don't know everything. I'm learning. I've had a couple big gardens before. It's been a couple years since I've had a serious garden. So there are 5 mistakes I made that I'm not going to make again. So let's go ahead and go to the garden, and I am going to share my mistakes so that you don't make the same mistakes that I did. My first mistake in my summer garden this year is I planted a few things that my family just doesn't enjoy. The best example is I planted cabbage. I know a lot of people love cabbage. I guess my family does not really like cabbage that much. I just got excited and I planted some cabbage. Turns out we did not really use the cabbage that much. We fed the cabbage to our animals, which was great. So the cabbage still had a purpose. It helped to feed our animals for the summer. But as a family, we just don't enjoy cabbage. So I either need to find a recipe that my family enjoys or not plant cabbage next year. So this is what I'm going to do next year. I am going to plan my garden around 4 main dishes. The first is pasta sauce. So I'm going to grow all the veggies I need to make pasta sauce. The second is salsa. So I am going to make my own salsa, which I have done that a little bit this year, but next year I'm going to plan out my pasta garden and my salsa garden. The next food I am going to grow a dish for are pickles. I grew a lot of pickles. We love pickles, so pickles are a mainstay in my garden. So I am going to make sure that I grow the right crops for pickles. The last area of the garden I'm going to make sure I grow next year, which I've done some this year, is winter squash. So we've gotten a lot of butternut squash, some acorn squash, but next year I'm going to grow more. So next year my garden is going to be planned around dishes and food that we enjoy so that I have a purpose for my harvest. Here is mistake number 2. I grew too much of certain crops. The best example for me is I grew a lot of crookneck squash, and it's hard to cut. And we have enjoyed it. I've loved it. We fed it to the goats and pigs. We use it in lasagna, pickles. But we grew too much of it. So I am not interested in starting a CSA or a farmer's market right now. I am just interested in feeding my family. So I need to plant more varieties of crops next year. And again, I've planted about 40 crops this year, but there's certain things we use a lot, like the squash. But just to mix it up, I think I had 6 squash plants that were crookneck squash. A family of 3 does not need that much squash. We had tons and tons of squash. There's tons and tons of squash in storage right now, which is great. But next year, I am going to plant maybe 1 squash plant or maybe 2 of that variety, and I'm going to find more squash plants. So as a family gardener, I just want to take care of my family. I am going to plant more varieties and less of each variety so that we have a much more balanced diet and we'll have a lot more, I guess, different types of food to try. So I am not going to plant 6 of the crookneck squash next year. I'm going to plant 2 because 2 is perfect for my family. Here is my third mistake. I planted some of my pumpkins way too close together. I knew they would vine out and take up a lot of space, but it had been years since I grew pumpkins, and I did not know they were going to vine out like this. In my fenced-in garden, I have 7 or 8 pumpkin plants that are doing okay, but they just don't have space to grow. They took over other crops. They went up the fence, which is not a great thing for the pumpkin vines to go up the fence, because I'm trying to grow big pumpkins. That's a lot of weight for that pumpkin on a fence, and they will probably break off this year. So I planted my pumpkins way too close in this part of the garden. So luckily I spread them out on the other side of the fence, and those are doing amazing. I have 4 plants that are probably 30 feet long right now. It is crazy. I did not know they were going to vine like this. So next year I am going to space out my pumpkins. If I don't, then I'm not really going to help these plants reach their full potential. So that's my third mistake, is planting some of my plants too close. Here is mistake number 4. I planted my tomatoes too late. I wouldn't say they are too late. It's August, the middle of August. I am still waiting for my tomatoes to ripen. Part of that is we have had a cold summer here, and we have had a lot of rain. I've only had to water my garden maybe 7 times in 3 months because we've had so much rain. And it hasn't been above 91 the entire summer. And right now in August, it's 50 in the mornings. It is a weird summer for us in the mountains of North Carolina. So I am still waiting on my tomatoes. And it isn't like I planted them too late. I planted them on the tail end of when I should have planted them. But what I really should have done is I should have planted some of those plants earlier and stagger my planting so that I would have gotten a crop, say 2 weeks ago, and then I would have a longer harvest season for my tomatoes. So I haven't gotten more than maybe 4 or 5 small cherry tomatoes this year so far. So next year I am going to plant them as early as I can to extend my season, because I am missing some homegrown tomatoes right now, and that is a sad mistake I made. The last big mistake I made this summer garden is that I needed to be more organized in keeping track of my planting and my harvesting dates. So I meant to make a garden logbook. I am doing that this fall. I've already logged in my plantings. So this is what I am doing for my next season garden. I am going to print out a blank calendar. I am going to put the planting date on that calendar, and then according to the seed packet, I am going to figure out the harvest date according to the seed packet, and I'm going to write that down so that at least I have a decent idea of how long I need to wait for harvest, so that I'm not always wondering, okay, are these watermelons ready? Okay, is this ready to harvest? How about my tomatillos? So at least I will have a reference point to keep in mind for when it's time to harvest certain crops and certain veggies. So a garden logbook is really easy to do. I wish I would have done it. I was just so busy this year trying to get the garden going. This again is a first year garden. I think that's pretty awesome for a first year garden, right? I mean, I've had a blast. This has been a great season. I can't wait till next year, because next year I'm going to grow twice as much. I'm already thinking about all the things I'm going to do and improve on. But those were 5 mistakes that I made this summer. I just wanted to share it with everybody because I don't want you to make the mistakes I made. I want you to have a better garden than me. And that is sincere. I want everyone to have a great garden. It's fun to experiment. Every summer I'm going to get better and better. If you've made any mistakes, if you want to share them with us, leave them in the comments. If you have any advice, I am open to lots of suggestions for improvement. If you've had luck doing something different, let me know, because I want to have a great garden and I want to get better and better and better. So if you enjoy our channel, please subscribe and please keep watching. We are having lots of fun making our videos, and it's about to be fall in the mountains here. So I'm going to be transitioning into a lot more homestead projects. Like, I have a lot of firewood to find and trees to take down. I have building projects I need to work on. So I'm going to transition from a lot of the garden to a lot of my homestead projects. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you in the future.